No one expected the dead princess to walk into the Grand Concordat summit, especially not with a human. The Royal Hall of Atoria, normally a symphony of diplomatic whispers and orchestrated power plays, went utterly silent. Delegates from 37 systems turned as one toward the massive crystal archway, where the figure stood, burned, bruised, alive. Talia. 7 years had passed since her ship disintegrated over the Corellan Rift. 7 years of silence, of whispered theories and empty ceremonies. And now, she stood there, eyes sharp despite the exhaustion, posture impossibly steady for someone believed to be stardust. The first sound that followed was not applause. It was the snap of a guard's weapon activating. The human beside her didn't flinch. He was chewing, loudly. A protein bar half-eaten, crumbs on his jacket. His hair was a chaos of curls and his flight suit had seen better centuries. And yet he stood there with the confidence of someone who had just walked into the wrong room but decided to stay anyway. Queen Lyria didn't breathe. Her body moved before her mind caught up. Silver robes trailing like wings as she crossed the chamber. Protocol be damned. Her arms wrapped around Talia like a storm, finally finding land. And Talia, warrior-trained and war-worn, froze for a fraction of a second. Then she dropped her guard, her blade, her composure, and collapsed into the embrace. "I got a bit sidetracked," she muttered into her mother's shoulder. The human cleared his throat. "Hi, I'm Ren," he said, as if introducing himself at a barbecue instead of a royal summit. "I kind of saved your daughter, though she saved me more. So, we're even." He paused. "Also, do you have anything that doesn't taste like rehydrated despair?" Weapons rose again. Talia's hand shot out protectively. "He's with me." A beat. "He breaks easily, complains constantly." Ren raised a brow. "That's fair." Queen Lyria studied him with the eyes of a ruler and a mother, trying to decide whether to thank him, arrest him, or vaporize him. Then she took Talia's hand, and for the first time in 7 years, her voice cracked. "Explain." And so the story began. A mining moon, a wrecked pod, a sarcastic human with terrible coffee and a talent for survival, a lost princess who didn't want to be found. 6 months of arguments, injuries, repairs, and laughter that neither of them expected. Talia was supposed to be dead. Ren was supposed to be no one. But here they were, back where everything started, in a room full of enemies wearing polite smiles. And for the first time in years, Talia wasn't alone. The moon didn't appear on most maps. Too small, too unstable, too forgotten, perfect for dying on. Ren hadn't been looking for a rescue. He was chasing a signal, one of those glitchy energy pulses scavengers live for. He hoped for a crashed freighter, or maybe a forgotten weapons crate. He found her instead. Half buried under the twisted metal of a ruined escape pod, skin the color of twilight and blood that shimmered like mercury. She didn't look human, but she also didn't look dead. Not entirely. "Well," he'd muttered, kneeling beside the wreckage. "This is either a miracle or the start of a very complicated hostage situation." The woman groaned. Definitely alive. It took 3 days to stabilize her enough to sit up. 2 more, before she stopped threatening to stab him every time he entered the room. "Stop breathing so loud," she'd hissed, voice raw. "It's not helping my recovery." "And your glowing veins are helping mine?" Ren shot back, waving a half-functional med scanner. "Seriously, what are you made of? And why does your blood look like luxury ink?" She glared at him. "Stop talking." "Great," he sighed. "Rescued a space elf with anger issues." She didn't laugh. Not then. But she also didn't stab him. That was progress. He called her Talia. She insisted she was a navigator. He didn't believe her. Not after she rewired an entire power grid using parts from a food synthesizer and something that looked suspiciously like ceremonial jewelry. She fixed things with a kind of precision that came from elite training, not from a cargo hauler's nav station. He cooked. Badly. His food tasted like disappointment and hope. She claimed it was inedible. Then she ate every bite. He joked, constantly. She stared at him, unimpressed. Then, one night, after a particularly clumsy attempt at replacing an oxygen filter, he fell into a pile of thermal blankets. She snorted. "You laugh like it hurts," he observed, peeking from under a blanket. "I have stitches," she said simply. They didn't talk about the war, or why she had nightmares, or why her hands trembled sometimes when she thought he wasn't looking. He didn't ask. He showed her old human shows instead. She scoffed, then binged 3 seasons in 2 days. He caught her reciting lines in her sleep. He didn't mention it. One night they sat under a cracked observation dome. The gas giant loomed above them, casting swirling shadows through the glass. "Why did you come here?" she asked quietly. "Same reason everyone does," he said. "Looking for something that doesn't exist. A quick score, a second chance, a miracle, you know. Trash moon dreams." She was quiet a long time. "I wasn't supposed to survive." Ren didn't say anything. "I ejected too early," she whispered. "Everyone else, they didn't make it." "You did." "It wasn't enough." "It doesn't have to be," he said. "Not yet. But it's a start." She turned to look at him then. Really look. Her eyes shimmered, not with tears but with the reflection of a star that hadn't been there before. "You're insufferable," she said. "And yet," he grinned, "you haven't thrown me out the airlock." "I considered it." He leaned back on his elbows. "Still do? Less than yesterday." "Progress." She told him her name was Talia. Short, simple, forgettable. But every now and then, when she thought he was asleep, she'd whisper another name. So softly the air barely caught it. Lyria. The first time Ren heard it, he assumed it was a dream. The second time, he remembered the interstellar news cycles. Articles that flickered like dying stars, still clinging to myths about the lost heir of Atoria. It couldn't be, right? Until she reprogrammed the gravity stabilizers using a language that wasn't listed in any known database. Until she instinctively responded to a noble command phrase embedded in an old AI system they salvaged. Until he caught her humming a melody that matched the Atorian royal anthem. And then there was the ceremonial blade. Elegant, deadly, marked with the sigil of House Lyria. Ren confronted her the next morning over terrible coffee and half-burnt protein bread. "You're not just a navigator," he said gently. "You're someone important." She didn't deny it. She just stared at the cracked wall for a long moment. "I was important," she said finally. "Once." Ren waited. "I ran," she whispered. "I didn't die. I ran. I ejected when my ship failed. I survived. And then I didn't go back." "Why?" She looked at him then. Really looked. "Because I was afraid they wouldn't want me." Silence stretched between them, thick with things left unsaid. "You were injured," he said. "You did what you had to do to survive. They expected me to die for a cause. I didn't. So I became inconvenient. Easier to mourn than explain." Ren reached across the table, taking her hand without thinking. Her skin was cool, faintly glowing beneath the surface. "You think the people who love you care more about the myth than the person?" She pulled her hand back, not unkindly, just hesitant. "I don't know what I am anymore," she admitted. "Not royalty. Not soldier. Just lost." Ren leaned back, arms behind his head, grinning that stupid grin of his. "Well," he said, "good news. You're currently talking to the reigning champion of being lost. I've made it an art form." She stared. Then, finally, a hint of a smile tugged at her lips. "You're an idiot," she muttered. He nodded. "The lovable kind." That night, she stood alone beneath the shattered sky, staring at the stars. The message beacon they found earlier blinked faintly. Still active, she held the ceremonial blade in both hands, the sigil glowing faintly. "Go," Ren said softly behind her. "If you don't, you'll never stop wondering." She turned. "It's not that simple. It never is. But you don't have to do it alone." The stars reflected in her eyes, not as distant as before. "Then don't leave." "I wasn't planning to." She activated the beacon. The return of a royal heir should have been scripted, announced with fanfare, delivered in perfect phrasing and ceremonial timing. Talia's wasn't. It was chaos. It was unscheduled. It was real. When they emerged from the lucky break, Ren's barely functional shuttle now covered in mismatched patches and emergency welds. They were met with 10 blasters, 3 gasping attendants, and 1 overexcited maintenance bot that tried to polish Ren's boots mid-emergency. He waved it away. "Later, Herbert." Talia walked forward without hesitation. Her posture was stiff, controlled, the gait of someone raised to be watched, evaluated. But her fingers twitched slightly, just once. Ren caught it. Then the great doors opened. The Grand Concordat Summit was in full swing. Every corner of the galaxy had sent envoys. Some hovered, some slithered, some pulsed with internal light. They all fell silent. Talia's footsteps echoed like thunder. Behind her, Ren stumbled once, tripping over his own bootlace and muttering something about needing better gravity calibration. He straightened, adjusted his half-burnt jacket, and followed anyway. It was the Queen who moved first. Lyria descended from the elevated dais like a storm breaking. Her silver robes swept across the floor, her advisors flinching as she ignored protocol, ignored decorum, ignored everything but her daughter. She didn't speak. She didn't hesitate. She ran. And Talia froze. For a single breath, she stood unmoving, as though afraid this was an illusion. Then, without warning, she moved, metal armor clattering softly, and collided with her mother in a full-body, armor-on-armor hug. It wasn't graceful. It wasn't royal. It was everything. Ren stood awkwardly beside them, unsure if he should clap or bow or just pretend to fade into the background. "I got a bit sidetracked," Talia muttered into Lyria's shoulder. The Queen didn't answer with words. Her grip only tightened. Then came the whispers. Counselors murmured. Recorders blinked on. Protocol Minister Terran practically fainted. Somewhere in the back, a diplomat from the fluid-based polity burbled in disbelief. Talia stepped back at last. Her bioluminescent skin flickered with subtle emotion, a language only Atorians could fully read. But even Ren could tell. She was holding back tears. She turned to him. "This is Ren," she said. He gave a little wave. "Hi." Silence. "He's the reason I'm standing here," she added, more firmly. "He kept me alive, fed me, argued with me, built 5 versions of a heater that all almost exploded." Ren raised a finger. Only one actually exploded. She ignored him. "I owe him everything." The Queen's gaze shifted. Slowly, calculatingly. She approached Ren, her presence a force field of expectation. Ren bowed, or tried to. It looked more like his spine gave out briefly. "Your Majesty," he croaked. She studied him. "You fed my daughter tube food?" She liked the second flavor, he offered. Kind of. A pause. Then, to everyone's shock, the Queen extended a hand. Ren took it, carefully. Her skin was cool. Her bioluminescent patterns pulsed faintly. "Then you are owed thanks," she said. "And apologies for the guards who are still aiming at you." He glanced around. "That explains the tingling in my back." Lyria turned. "Cancel the summit." Gasps followed. "But, Your Majesty," Minister Terran began. "My daughter has returned," she said. "Everyone else can wait." Ren raised a hand. "Quick question. Is there food involved in this cancellation? I'm running on hope and caffeine at this point." Talia closed her eyes. "He does this." Lyria almost smiled. "Then, I suggest we feed our guest before he expires. Diplomatically." Ren gave her a thumbs up. "Royal hospitality rocks." Talia had barely slept. Ren had snored loudly enough to rattle a ventilation panel in the guest suite, and someone had tried to poison her tea. The morning briefing with the Council of Worlds began with the usual decorum. Glowing nameplates, multilingual greetings, a small, floating translator that coughed every time Ren spoke. And then came the real questions. How had Talia survived? Why hadn't she contacted anyone? Was her return a calculated political maneuver? What precisely was the human's role in her escape? And had he seen sensitive materials? Talia sat at the center of a circular chamber, spine straight, voice calm. "My ship took heavy fire. I ejected before the core breached. I had no communications. I was injured. I survived." "And you did not attempt contact for 7 years?" asked a delegate with skin like cracked marble. I was unconscious for the first month, then stranded. Then, uncertain if returning would cause more damage than good, the chamber murmured, some in sympathy, some in skepticism. Was the human aware of your heritage? Ren blinked. Not until she tried to rewire a gravity inverter using a ceremonial dagger and muttered royal protocol in her sleep. Silence. She was very stealthy about it, he added helpfully. A crystalline representative, slender and semi-transparent, tilted its head. He displays atypical neural response patterns. That's just caffeine and anxiety, Ren replied. I swear. Talia exhaled slowly. He is no threat. He is a mechanic. Your Majesty, someone said, addressing the Queen. With all respect, this individual is unpredictable. He has no clearance. He set off 3 alarms on the way to the lavatory. I got lost, Ren exclaimed. Your security system is shaped like a maze and flirted with me. Lyria blinked once. Explain. Ren cleared his throat. It asked me to input core temperature preferences. Intimately. Several counselors looked horrified. One took notes. Regardless, a stern voice interrupted, we request a full truth scan. Talia stood. Denied. The room tensed. She is a member of the royal house, the Queen said coldly. You will not violate her autonomy. She is a potential threat, another delegate snapped. Then allow her to prove otherwise, a softer voice offered. Let her act. It was a trap. Everyone knew it, but Talia nodded anyway. That afternoon, during a security demonstration, one of the cleaning drones malfunctioned and launched itself at her with alarming force. Ren intercepted it mid-flight with a chair. The resulting crash was impressive. The drone short-circuited. The chair shattered. Ren groaned from the floor. You okay? Talia asked, pulling him up. Chair 1, Ren 0, he muttered. But I think I earned a medal. The guards were less amused. An investigation revealed the drone had been reprogrammed with hostile code embedded in its cleaning routine. Somebody weaponized a vacuum, Ren whispered, staring at the wreckage. Talia's expression hardened. They're testing me. Ren looked at her. They're testing us. She said nothing. But later, as they walked the palace corridors, her hand brushed his. Once, briefly. It was enough. That evening, Ren found her on the garden balcony, barefoot, still in partial armor, staring at the stars like they owed her answers. He stepped onto the cool crystal floor quietly, not wanting to break whatever moment she was in. But she spoke first. I thought I'd be different when I came back. Ren leaned on the balcony beside her, careful not to knock over the floating lanterns drifting like silent fireflies. You are, he said. She looked at him, brow raised. Better, he added quickly. More sarcastic. Bit more stabby. But also more, I don't know, alive. She snorted softly. Sarcastic and stabby. Royal traits, clearly. A pause, then. They're scared of me, Ren. They should be, he said without hesitation. You survived 7 years alone, fixed half a base with broken kitchenware, and stopped a murder vacuum with your bare hands. Honestly, I'm scared of you too. It's kind of hot. She rolled her eyes. You're impossible. And yet, here I am. A breeze caught the edge of her cloak. Her bioluminescent patterns shifted in soft waves, blue to violet to silver. They think I'm dangerous, she murmured. You are, he said, to people who deserve it. Her hand tightened on the railing. I don't know how to be who they want me to be. Then don't. She turned fully, facing him. What if I'm too changed? Too angry? Too broken? Ren took a breath. Then you're exactly what they need. Talia stared at him. Her eyes shimmered with something unsaid. A storm barely held back. Then she stepped forward, just slightly. Just enough. Ren didn't move. She touched his chest, just 2 fingers light against the fabric of his shirt over where his heart beat. You were there, she whispered, when everything else wasn't. His voice caught. Yeah, you too. Her eyes dropped to the floor. I didn't expect to need anyone, especially not someone who talks to vacuum cleaners. Hey, he said. Herbert and I have an understanding. She laughed, soft and tired. Then it faded. I've never done this before. Ren tilted his head. Laughed at one of my jokes? Happens a lot. Late reaction time is common. I mean this, she interrupted, eyes flicking up to meet his. Letting someone in. Letting someone close. Ren's voice dropped. Then let's not rush it. He stepped closer, slow and careful, like approaching something sacred, and he wrapped his arms around her, not with heat, not with lust, but with warmth, safety. She stood stiff for a second, then slowly melted into it. Her head rested against his shoulder, his heartbeat under her cheek. They stood there for minutes, unmoving. Her voice was muffled. You smell like burnt coffee and adrenaline. You smell like starlight and sarcasm. That's not a smell. Then it should be. She laughed again, softer, and didn't pull away. The next morning, everything felt lighter. The council hadn't stopped murmuring. Talia's name was on every screen. But she walked differently now, shoulders looser, gaze steadier. Ren noticed it first. You slept, he said, handing her a cup of something vaguely resembling coffee. She raised an eyebrow. Did I? You drooled on my shoulder. I have proof. A beat. Sorry. Don't be. I was honored. Most people just stab me. They sat together on the edge of the palace's east tower, where solar wind collectors shimmered like sails in starlight. The city stretched out beneath them, impossibly vast. That's when it happened. A chirp from the old datapad Talia kept on her hip. The screen flickered, then stabilized, showing a repeating symbol, a spiral encased in flame. She froze. Ren leaned over. New voicemail? That's not our network, she whispered. That's Historian Protocol. Level 0. Pre-split. Ren blinked. Translation? That symbol hasn't been seen in over 600 years. It predates even the first Atorian dynasty. It's ancient code, and it's active. Her hands moved rapidly over the pad, decrypting, tracing signal paths. The source wasn't far. Deep below the palace, beneath the old foundation. A remnant. A message. Or maybe a weapon. Getting access wasn't easy. Even as royalty, Talia had to argue with 3 levels of security, 2 cranky archivists, and a sentient lock that demanded a riddle in Old Atorian. Ren guessed the answer. By accident. Hope, he'd said. Isn't it always that? The door opened. Talia stared at him. He shrugged. I'm a romantic. Don't tell anyone. They descended through forgotten corridors, dustless and cold, preserved by long-lost tech. At the end, a chamber waited. Octagonal, silent, pulsing faintly with power. In its center, a pedestal. On it, a single object, a crystalline sphere suspended in a beam of light. The moment Talia stepped forward, the sphere lit up. Symbols danced in the air. Ancient language, but somehow she understood. She turned to Ren, voice low. It's a failsafe, she said. A last resort relay beacon, coded only for royal lineage, meant to call allies when the government falls. He looked at her. And it's active? It activated when I did. Ren stepped closer. So, it waited for you. Talia looked down at her hands. No, she whispered. It waited for someone who chose not to be what came before. She turned to him. This doesn't have to be about reclaiming what was lost. His eyes met hers. It can be about building something new. The medical check had been routine. Standard royal protocol after exposure to ancient tech, the palace doctor had said. Talia hadn't expected anything unusual. Scan, a few questions, clearance. She'd been through worse. What she hadn't expected was the flicker of another heartbeat. Not hers, not Ren's. Smaller, softer, still forming. She stared at the projection on the screen, silent. The physician, a gentle older woman with cybernetic eyes and hands that never shook, cleared her throat. I can confirm, she said quietly. You're approximately 12 weeks, hybrid gestation, stable, viable. Talia's hands gripped the edge of the med table. Is it safe? For now, yes, the doctor nodded. Your physiology adapted. Remarkably so. There are adjustments, but you're strong, and it seems so is the child. Talia said nothing. Later, she found Ren. He was elbow-deep in a panel near the main communications relay, humming some off-key Earth song and arguing with a diagnostic bot that clearly hated him. "I'm telling you," he muttered, "you can't just reroute everything through the snack dispenser. That's not how relays—" She cleared her throat. He turned, stopped. Something in her face made him straighten instantly. No jokes, no smirk, just quiet. "Everything okay?" he asked gently. She nodded once. Then she held up the scan. He looked at it, confused at first. Then his mouth parted, but no sound came. "I didn't know," she said, voice steady despite the storm behind her ribs. "I didn't feel anything. It must have happened. During the 3rd month on the moon, we were both wounded, distracted." He stepped forward slowly. "Talia," he said softly, You're sure?" She nodded again. He exhaled, and then he reached for her hand, so gently like she might vanish. His fingers brushed hers. She didn't pull away. "Are you angry?" she asked. "What? No, I'm—" He laughed, short and stunned. "I'm confused, terrified, but mostly in awe." She blinked. "I didn't think I'd ever be part of anything that mattered," he said. "Let alone this." Talia's eyes softened. "We weren't meant to be this," she whispered. "But here we are." Ren smiled faintly. "It's not the first impossible thing we've survived." He looked at her, not like a warrior or a princess or even the future of a fractured star empire. Just her. And then, softly, "Whatever you decide, we face it together." Her answer wasn't words. It was her hand tightening around his. It began with an explosion, not a declaration, not a warning, just a tremor that cracked the royal garden's outer wall and sent bioluminescent petals scattering like stardust. Ren tackled Talia instinctively, shielding her with his body as debris rained down. Her guards rushed forward, too late. Whoever had planted the charge had known exactly when and where to strike. A coordinated hit. Inside job. The palace went into lockdown. Panic bloomed, and somewhere deep in the fractured foundation, the ancient relay system, recently reactivated, began to pulse harder. A distress signal, unknown in origin, echoed through old frequencies. Not a call for help, a challenge. Talia didn't hide. Even as the Unity Council scrambled for safety, she stood in the ruined chamber, dust and flame around her, hair tangled, armor cracked, but alive. "I'm done being a ghost," she said, eyes glowing like stormlight. "Let them see me bleed. Let them see me rise." She turned to Ren. "I need to reach the control core. If that relay goes critical, it'll trigger failsafe protocols across 7 systems." He blinked, then grinned. "So no pressure." "Minimal chance of death," she added. "Maybe. I'll get my wrench." The path to the control chamber was chaos. Half-collapsed tunnels, sparking conduits, crumbling stairs, but they moved like they always had, together. She was strategy. He was improvisation. She bypassed energy seals with precise code. He rewired overloaded conduits with chewing gum and sarcasm. She nearly fell during a tremor. He caught her without thinking, bracing them both against the wall. "Still stabby," he panted, "still infuriating. You love it." "I might." They reached the chamber. A feedback surge hit just as Talia interfaced with the core. Light erupted, energy lashing across the room. Ren moved without thinking, threw himself over her, shielding her again. This time, she didn't let him fall alone. When the system stabilized and the threat subsided, a new signal broadcast. Not panic, not war, but a message, one voice. Unity through truth, strength through change, hope even when broken. Talia's voice, projected across star systems, a symbol, a vow, and at her side, as the screens across the galaxy lit up, stood a human, with grease on his cheek, a cracked comms unit in his hand, and his other arm wrapped protectively around the woman who had once been a myth. And now she was the future. Not alone. Not anymore. 2 weeks later, the Lucky Break sat gleaming in the royal docking bay. It looked nothing like it had before. Atorian engineers had wept upon seeing it, and then rebuilt half of it out of sheer horror. Now, It carried upgraded propulsion, reinforced shields, a sanitation system that didn't smell like despair, and a tiny plaque that read, "This ship once saved a princess." Kind of. Ren stood beside it, arms crossed, squinting up at the hull. "Still looks like a flying mistake," he muttered affectionately. Talia joined him, dressed in modified armor-soft robes, half royal, half ready to run. She carried no crown, no title. Just a small satchel and a steady gaze. "Everything packed?" he asked. She nodded. "Especially the blue dessert you pretend I don't like." He smirked. "I knew it." A few meters away, Queen Lyria stood with quiet pride. "You changed everything," she said to her daughter. Talia looked at her. "No, Mother. I just stopped pretending I couldn't." They embraced. No ceremony. Just warmth. When the Queen stepped back, her hand rested briefly on Talia's stomach, glowing faintly through the fabric. "You'll be brilliant," she said softly. Then looked at Ren. "Both of you." He tried to salute. Failed. Settled for a grin. "We'll try not to crash." The docking bay opened. The lucky brake rose, engines humming like contented sighs. As the stars rushed forward, Talia leaned back in the co-pilot seat, fingers twining with Ren's. "Where to?" he asked. He smiled. "Anywhere that needs a little hope."